My dad, Melvin Kraft, is Gene Cromer's crew chief. I'm the type of individual, if it is racing, no matter what it is, I'm like, well, I'm going to be opinionated. I can be rather opinionated at times. So I said, I am going to start a YouTube channel. So in the Kraft household, it was all about racing or truck driving or hot rodding. And as many of you know, my dad, Melvin Kraft, is Gene Cromer's crew chief back in the day, and even here in the modern day when the car was restored. And it was great hearing the drag racing stories of him and Gene running up down the road, drag racing down in, Miami, or going up to Indy when it was 1965, or, match racing Fred Hurst, and talking about the early funny car days when funny car was really, really funny. It was more at the time because Gene and Daddy were not drag racing, and there wasn't a lot of time spent over at Gene's shop because Gene wasn't active in that way due to the strokes that he had had and moving on in his career. It really was a household of digesting racing regularly, whether it was NASCAR Winston Cup racing, whether it was NHRA drag racing. And from Winston Cup to like when I was a little kid, some of the earliest memories I have is being in my diapers and I'm watching Bill Elliott and Dale Earnhardt duke it out in those great late 80s cars. Red and white Coolers car for Bill and the blue and yellow Wrangler for Earnhardt, and just rewatching old VHSs that we had taped and just over and over and over. And as a kid thinking it's live. And the same thing for like Diamond P Sports, 88 and 87 and 89. I wore those out pulling for Bob Glidden and Mark Oswald. Again, not realizing, oh, this isn't live, but just enjoying the racing that was in front of me. So it was a household that racing was on all the time. We went to NASCAR races, we went to drag races, we went to the museums. Concerning Gene in particular, I remember going over to Gene's speed shop in Anderson occasionally because Dad had the shop wherever it was in many various locations. And we'd occasionally go over there to see Gene, and I remember just being mesmerized at what Gene had in this. At the time, it almost seemed like a museum. All the parts and pieces for an engine shop, for a speed shop, and he's had the parts side to it. There's this one spot, too, in Gene's shop. As a kid, I found it every time I went over there. It's a little rise in the floor going to the other section of the building, and I would trip over it all the time. Oh, man, there it is. There it is. And lo and behold, it's years afterward, I'm helping actually turn in a few screws on the Moonlighter, getting it ready for its debut, and guess what? I trip over the same spot, and it's been years and years since being over there as a kid. I'm the type of individual, if it is racing, no matter what it is, IMSA, F1, hill climbing, I love to call the guys over in Europe on bikes that just hang it out, like the sprint cars of motorcycle racing, or the Isle of Man TT, the Dakar Rally, whatever it is. If it's racing, I love it. And I want to be a part of it, and I want to experience, I want to see it. So from diapers and racing champions and running my own races all the way to now and being a part of racing on the media side of things and even working with professional teams, let's go racing. So many would look at where I was in a family that loved racing, that had a chassis shop, a kid here that did junior dragsters, and think, oh, you got into racing and you got into the motorsports media side of things because that was just a natural course. But that is not the case. Mom and Dad, they have a divorce. Junior drag racing doesn't continue. We never get a bigger car. I never go drag racing again competitively, but always wanted to be a part of racing some way, somehow. So play football, and I get injured. And after getting injured, and I do believe in providence. I do believe there is a God, and he began to work in my life, and I believe he called me to the ministry. And I stepped into the ministry, youth pastor. Later on, I go pastor churches, and even went to pastor a church in New York State outside of Rochester. Through all this, I still obviously watch racing, and I stay up on racing, and I'm passionate about it. But I would find myself, whether I'm working as a welder or I'm working on a farm, which we'll get to, and nobody really wants to talk about racing, and that's what I want to talk about. That's what I love. That's what I enjoy. I'm there in New York. I've been there for about 6 years, and I realized this small church that I attempted to revitalize and move forward, that it really wasn't going to go nowhere. Great people, loved them, but I just realized that it was not going to move forward. I'm working part-time to make the ends meet on a dairy farm, some of the hardest work I have ever done. And the boss on the dairy farm, the owner of the dairy farm, great guy outside of work, like I would have Thanksgiving dinner with his family. But at work, one of the worst bosses I think I have ever had. And I had to become an individual over 2 years that I was his most trusted employee. I was the guy that could come in and flip all the switches and turn the knobs and get the pumps running, get the cows up, and he might even be able to get a longer nap and come in later and work that shift with me and milk the cows. He finally said the last condescending thing I was going to let him say. And we had a nice little conversation. I told him who he was, kindly. I told him who he was, though, and I put in a notice. After I'm done working on that job, I'm sitting at home, I've got spare time, and what do we do in this day and time of having spare time? We watch YouTube. That's what I was doing. I was watching YouTube, and I see these young punk kids with successful NASCAR channels making money off of YouTube, and I'm thinking to myself, I can do that. You know what? I think I could do that better. So I said, I am going to start a YouTube channel. When you start a YouTube channel, you got to have a name. What do you pick? I'm thinking to myself, well, it needs to be racing related, but I don't want anything generic like Drag Racer 19 something or NASCAR Central. Well, we got to have something unique. What's out there? I'm like, well, I'm going to be opinionated. I can be rather opinionated at times. And there's the term Monday morning quarterback or Monday morning quarterbacking. I'm like, let me search Monday morning racer. There's nothing out there for Monday morning racer. And I said, that is who I am going to be. I'm going to be the Monday morning racer. And if it's motorsports, whatever it is, I'm going to try to talk about it. I'm going to try to cover it. I am going to dive in on that. So that is how it all started. I like to say that it's all because of Jesus, cow dung, and nitro, which is the latter half of the Monday Morning Racer story. So YouTube is way more challenging than you might think. It is a lot of hard work. Do not think, oh, I'm going to create a YouTube channel, I'm going to make a bunch of money. No, that's not the case. What happens when you create a YouTube channel is you begin learning everything that is wrapped up within YouTube. You're learning video editing, you're learning graphic design, you're learning how to use a still camera and a motion capture camera, and you got to learn it all, it seems like. All this hard work seemed like it wasn't paying off, and I wasn't getting much traction on YouTube, and I had a passion, again, to cover anything in motorsports. At a local airport in Brockport, New York, they were going to start a brand new program of no-prep drag racing on one of the taxiways. And I was like, oh, this sounds interesting. This sounds cool. And being brand new, maybe I can get in entry level and there won't be that much of a fight to get in on the media level side of things. So sure enough, I'm able to go. I filmed my first drag race, first race that I ever filmed that was like live and right there in front of me, and later on put it up on YouTube. And it went really well. And I found myself, wow, I enjoy being back at the track and filming races. Though I want to drive eventually, this is like as close as I can get back to it, and this is pretty cool. And then I noticed the views. The views started picking up. The subscribers started picking up. So I thought to myself, let me continue to film live drag races and edit them and put them on YouTube. So I go to Lancaster Dragway, which is New York International Raceway Park, and the supercharged bounty hunter guys, kind of like outlaw old school pro mod. I begin filming them, and the Tuesday night heritage guys with the nostalgia night, I begin filming them, and whatever I can film and get up on YouTube, I'm just pumping it and pumping it and pumping it. And I've always had a passion for NHRA professional drag racing. Me and my dad, we would go every year to the Southern Nationals, Atlanta Dragway, may it rest in peace. And that was our father-son thing. We go to Friday qualifying and enjoy the day at the drags. Well, it came up. It was around his time for his birthday, which is when the Southern Nationals fall, right around there. And I'm like, come on, Dad, we're going to to the drag races, enjoy Friday qualifying, and I'm going to take my camera too, my tripod. I want to see if I can get any interviews because the NHRA has what? Every ticket is a pit pass. So I'm going to take my camera, I'm going to take my tripod, and I'm going to see who I can interview. And it took up some gumption to build up within me to go get that first interview, but it was Andy Rollins, Pro Stock Motorcycle. That went well enough that I just continued out the day. I got about 6 or 7 interviews. We're talking about Erica Enders, Alex Laughlin, Ron Capp, Steve Torrance, Clay Milliken. And I thought to myself in that moment, I can do this. I can be this guy. How are they going to remember me? Because I wasn't able to go to every NHRA national event. And I said, you know, most of the time I'm wearing sunglasses at the track anyway because it's bright, you're out in the elements. Also, wearing glasses helps out from any of the debris and exhaust coming off the cars. Like, you know what? I need some cool shades. And now you see what I'm wearing. And it's all because it goes back to drag racing and motorsports and a little bit of wrestling. Scotty Cannon. I grew up in the upstate of South Carolina, and if you're going to pull for somebody in Pro Mod, it was Scotty Cannon. Well, I remember his funny car days, and what did he wear? He wore outrageous Oakleys. So I'm like, okay, Oakleys, we got to wear that. And I'm like, you know what? They need to be big. They need to be recognizable. I've got a big head, so I'm like, they got to cover this big head. Got to be recognizable. Got to make me memorable. I'm like, you know what? Also, John Force and Richard Petty, they always wear sunglasses. And the old Macho Man, I like what he wore. So I went out and I got these big honking glasses that you see now that now are part of the persona, and I can't get rid of them. And I've got several different colors and styles within this Oakley Sutros brand. But the whole reason of the glasses was to make me recognizable. I happened to have a beard at the time, and I've kept the beard, and now I have a logo, and now I'm stuck with the shades, ball cap, and the glasses as well. Cool deal, though. No worries. I continue to go to as many drag races as I can locally, and whenever I could get to a NHRA national event, I would go there too. Now, mind you, this was not I have a ton of extra money to go take a weekend vacation of the drag race. No, this was sometimes driving all night, for example, from Rochester, New York to Norwalk, Ohio, be there all day on a Friday qualifying, try to get interviews and video clips while there, be there early, because that's when you can get interviews, be there late, because that's when you can get their interviews, then drive all night to Beaver Springs Dragway in Pennsylvania, get very little sleep, film a no-prep drag race, go back to New York, pastor on Sunday morning, and begin editing to get it out on Monday. That's the kind of work I'm talking about in this YouTube channel, and to make it to where I am now. And the catalyst to that is the finals, 2019 NHRA, Pomona, California. I felt, again, at this time, all this is swirling around, that I realized that I'm not going to be at this church any longer. God, what do I do? Where do I go? What's the next step? And I just had that feeling. I had a gut feeling that I needed to get to Pomona and cover the last race of the 2019 season in the NHRA. I didn't have the money. I had enough money for booking a hotel. Not no fine hotel either, by the way, but I didn't have enough money for the flight. So I called Mom. I got one of the best moms in the world you could have. And I don't regularly do this, but I'm like, Mom, can I borrow some money? And Mom was willing to help me pay for the tickets to get an airplane ride. I get out to Pomona, California. There is a particular team that I can work with, I can help on a volunteer status, and I'm getting that footage and working with them and helping them through drag racers and people who own teams like Mike Smith Jr., the son of Paul Smith, and Paul Weiss, the owner of the New Englander Funny Car. And you also have Paul and Dave Richards with their Funny Car team. These people had kind of gave me some opportunities, and me volunteering for them to do some social media and to do some filming, that here I'm at Pomona, and I had already met, but not met, a guy by the name of Chip Lofton, the owner of strutmasters.com. There he is. Here I am in Pomona. I interview one of his young and upcoming drivers, Justin Ashley, and I had the opportunity to talk to Chip. And I talked to Chip. I'm like, hey, Chip, I want to let you know I interviewed Justin Ashley. We'll have that up on Facebook later, and thank you for what you're doing in the sport. At the time, he was sponsoring several cars, making it possible for the NHRA to have full fields in many ways, in many aspects, through many of the different classes of the professional ranks. And that was Friday. Well, we go to Saturday. I'm waiting in line to talk to Ron Capps, and here comes Chip Lofton. He sees me, I see him. Hey, Chip, how you doing? Hey, Lee, how you doing? And he walks on, and he stops. And it's that thinking stop, because he kind of halfway a quarter turn and kind of looking at me and kind of like, and he comes back to me and he says, hey, who are you working for this weekend? I said, I'm just volunteering, and it's just one team. That's all I'm really doing this weekend, just trying to get whatever content I can. And he says to me, look, I want you to go down to Terry Haddock, who he was sponsoring that weekend. I want you to get a crew shirt. I want you to get a strutmasters.com crew shirt, and you're going to hang with me this weekend. You're going to cover my cars. He didn't say anything about money. He didn't say anything about paying me, but he gave me an opportunity. And I took that opportunity. And that opportunity turned into working at Strutmasters for a while. It put me out there for 2020 and 2021 of being on the NHRA tour at the highest level almost any and every weekend, interacting with the biggest names and the smallest names, and getting opportunities where now Monday Morning Racer and what I've started is Craftwell Multimedia. I do social media for drag racing teams. I do video production for drag racing teams. I host 2 live shows, one on CompetitionPlus.com for them, which is the world's largest online drag racing magazine, called the Competition Plus Power Hour, and it airs on Tuesday nights. And I do my own show on Thursday nights called Between the Slicks, where we talk everything drag racing, no matter whether big or small names, driver or crew member, promoter or sponsor. It's also carried on to now I'm not just working behind the scenes with teams, but with Funny Car Chaos and Chris Graves this year in 2022, I'm going to be their pit reporter and be on Flow Racing and living out a dream, because I said to myself, wow, it would be cool, and it's still a dream of mine, to drive a nitromethane-powered big show car of some type at the NHRA level. But right below that was, if I can't do that, I want to be Steve Evans. And I may never be as cool as Steve, but I at least have got the shot, the opportunity, with a whole lot of hard work. I believe definitely by providence, within a couple of years, I'm going to be able to do what Steve Evans did in the drag racing world with a growing platform in Funny Car Chaos. So I can't wait for what's in store for the Monday Morning Racer.